The pink dawn is at hand. It comes swiftly. The story of Cracker Island takes place on the foothills of the past two Gorillaz eras. In the Now Now, Phase 5, Murdoc had been replaced by Ace while in jail. Upon Murdoc's return, during the time of Song Machine and Meanwhile, Phase 6, he realized that he had lost a lot of respect from his bandmates. They took trips without him, not even bothering to wake him, and more or less pretended that he didn't exist. 2D held a strong new attitude about him, and was more so seen as the leader of the band over Murdoc, as 2D had led the band while Murdoc was away and did a great job of it. Murdoc held a lot of remorse for allowing himself to become so disliked. I have a sneaking suspicion he was also feeling a tad lonely, and he attempted to take back control from what I call his panic room closet. Typically, the portals under Kong Studios were reserved for the leader of the band, and while 2D was using them to travel now, Murdoc was developing his own portals. And while it's unclear if one of these portals sent the band to Plastic Beach during the events of the last Chord, it is rumored that something backfired with these portals, causing the sinkhole below Kong Studios to form and destroy the building. This may actually hint at a bigger problem that took place during Cracker Island, something that is yet to be resolved. We'll get back to that in a moment. The band collected the insurance money from Kong Studios and moved to a new location, a mansion above Silver Lake, where they set up a studio in the basement to record their next album. While working on the album, Murdoc claimed to witness a prophecy, one which insisted that he should be the leader of his own cult. After convincing his bandmates that this cult would aim to improve the world, they agreed to join him, and the last cult was born. The last cult the world would ever need. The truth of the matter was that he had witnessed his neighbor, Moonflower, whom he clearly fancied, performing rites out back, and wanted to make his own cult to impress her. Now he did receive a prophecy of sorts, but as it turns out, the very same cult next door had delivered it to Murdoc, Moonflower specifically. This prophecy was the Cracker Island music video. Now the cult lineup was as such, with the 4 members of the band being the high leaders. Murdoc became the great leader, being put in charge of public statements. Russel became the truth seeker, being put in charge of research, divination, and prophecy deciphering. Noodle became the scholar, the doctrine writer, and world cult researcher. And 2D became the chosen one, tasked with performing rituals and tending to the landscaping, and that of course included hole digging.
Okay, that's deep enough. You right, Murdoc? I've dug my hole. Now what? Murdoc? Murdoc? Can someone chuck a rope down?
All to make the atmosphere more cult-like. The obelisk was a nice touch, I do admit. With their roles assigned, the high elders of the last cult went to work, encouraging their followers to spread the word of the last cult in whatever way they could. Russel began to search the TV static for clues, as the original prophecy had been sent to Murdoc through the TV. Russel believed that the keys to the Promised Land were hidden within. Noodle began to feel unsure about the whole ordeal, but she did unknowingly stumble upon this first big clue. The book on masks revealed a secret about Moonflower. She wasn't who she was pretending to be, this face being the true mask, while what lied underneath was something much more nefarious. Murdoc continued to fawn over Moonflower, hoping she would notice all that he was doing as High Beacon, the true leader of the last cult and leader of the band. She soon dropped by to tell him to stop spying on her and her cult's activities. 2D was the one to get the door, but Murdoc was too highly ranked to do something as lowly as answer the door. He apologized to Moonflower, and began to feel a bit of a crush rising in himself.
What's that? Oh, okay. I'll tell Murdoc to stop looking over the fence at you. You have a nice day too. That was a lady from next door. She seems nice.
2D was greatly surprised to find himself invited over to the neighbor's place for a cup of tea. This is when he found out that she had her own cult club as well. The mint tea tasted a bit funny, but 2D found himself craving it more and more with each cup. He would often visit for tea, and even began spreading flyers for the forever cult next door, in exchange for more of this tea. It was also during this time that 2D began to attempt world records, one of them being a number of clothespins on a human face.
I'm going for the world record for the most clothes pegs clipped to a face. I'm up to 14. Running out of space now, so I'm gonna use my tongue. Here we go.
It isn't clear if he was doing this to try to impress Moonflower, but as Murdoc attempted to reach a new world record for levitation height during the Q&A sessions,
I'm still going up. Oh, I can't believe it. What a glorious day. Oh, it's lovely weather for it, isn't it? I think I've already smashed my levitation record already.
it's likely that 2D and Murdoc were competing for her affection via these record-breaking attempts. 2D also began to experiment to see what would happen if a human being ate exclusively toast for a solid year.
Begin experiment to see what happens if I only eat toast for a whole year. Nothing to report yet. See you later.
This experiment may have been caused by Murdoc's gatekeeping of the rest of the food behind the cult member ranks, however.
Having a poke about in the fridge? Hang about. Someone's written on my cheese. Only eat if your cult level is Grandmaster or higher. Oh. I'll have to have some ham instead. Oh, what? Same message. Have to be ice cubes again.
2D was given gifts from Moonflower during his visits next door. Among these was a poster of an eye that watched his dreams, and some sacred scrolls, which he kept under his bed. These scrolls held vital information about the cult. Noodle searched 2D's room for clues while he was away for yet another cup of tea. His behavior had changed drastically, and Noodle had begun to worry for him.
This tea is well nice. My legs have gone melty like they're made of cheese. I feel brilliant.
Noodle took one of the scrolls, and from it, it was revealed that the cult next door was known as the Forever Cult. Murdoc grew jealous, as the Forever Cult's high priestess, Moonflower, seemed to show more interest in 2D than in him. This wasn't supposed to be what the last cult stood for. It was supposed to put the attention back on Murdoc. But, yet again, 2D was still in the limelight. Murdoc was supposed to be the one to get the kiss. It was his prophecy. Why was 2D the one in the spotlight? He would have to make 2D work twice as hard as punishment. It was time for more holes. Moonflower told 2D the next time he came over that he should leave the last cult and join the Forever Cult, as they wouldn't make him do something like dig holes all day. Moonflower also called Murdoc a false prophet during the chat.
He called me a false prophet. Now he worships that bunch of muppets next door.
During this time, Russel was becoming absorbed into the static channel and began prophesying an event he called the Rupture, which he believed would result in a gateway to the Promised Land that would open under the Hollywood sign on New Year's Eve. He began piecing everything together on his theory whiteboard, like a private investigator, or more so like a conspiracy theorist. The truth was in the static, and the pieces just kept appearing among the blank channels. But who or what was sending Russel this prophecy in the static? Was it the same person who sent Murdoc the original prophecy, which is the Cracker Island music video? If so, why? What was the Forever Cult and Moonflower's endgame? Unintentionally, following along with the messages from the static, Murdoc began to bottle up his own fragrance, his toilet water.
So choose a gay adventure. Choose Escapade Toilet Water. Immediately you feel lovely.
Which he dubbed the essence of Murdoc. He had done this to try to market his newly found high status, but the timeline of events seemed to be following the timeline set by the static channel. If we continued to follow the videos in order, what did all of this mean? The essence of Murdoc, this unholy cocktail, consisted of vegetables, herbs, cheeses, and wine, all while Murdoc took a bath in the mix. Well, I mean, if Belle Dauphine could sell her bathwater, why couldn't the great leader Murdoc? This was the brine to the sacred pickle mentioned in Russel's prophecy. Noodle tried to stop him by pouring chili powder into the bath, but Murdoc went on with the production of the essence of Murdoc. The result was a foul-smelling concoction that caused one's skin to peel. The product was pulled from production, but not before Murdoc secured a bottle for himself. One of the pamphlets from the cult next door was mentioned during an interview with Rolling Stone magazine, offering a free aura exam. 2D had brought it in with him, arriving late to the interview from his visit next door. Noodle gave the pamphlet a good look over after the interview, telling 2D that nothing was free, and he should be careful around the Forever Cult, as their motives were unclear. The year was coming to an end, and so, Russel began preparing the group's passage through the Rupture. The vehicle depicted here in the blueprints would be the band's ticket out of here, and to the promised land of Cracker Island. As the new year rang in, Russel found out the hard way that his Rupture prediction was wrong. He traveled to the Hollywood sign in the middle of the night, alone, preparing for the Rupture to open, as the rest of the band would not join him. But nothing happened. He came back home with a right hump. Murdoc's decision to make 2D the chosen one had failed him as well, as 2D left the last cult and joined up with the Forever cult officially. Noodle began to research the origins of the Aura exam flyer and came across information regarding an actress named Lady Hollodown, the name actually being an anagram for Hollywoodland. This makes me wonder if Hollywoodland was derived from Lady Hollodown's name and was named after her, or if Lady Hollodown is another pseudonym like Moonflower. She had been a popular name in the early years of Hollywood. Noodle shared all of this information on the Gorillaz Discord server via text among the band members. This Lady Hollodown person closely resembled Moonflower. Could this have been her grandmother? Or maybe even her great-grandmother? Lady Hollodown had bought land in 1923 and was an early investor in Hollywoodland, which is the original name for Hollywood. Further digging reveals that she made a movie entitled The Hills Are Hungry. This film was made by a studio that Lady Hollodown had helped develop, Forever and Ever Pictures. This production company was located in the same location that the Forever cult were located now. Noodle went next door for answers, only to find a sheet of paper alluding to a rupture, the same rupture that Russel had been prophesying. Russel realized that his calculations had been off, reworking it to reveal that the Forever cult were essentially immortal, having made a deal with a time demon to keep their youth. This ritual would have to be repeated every 25 years on the full moon of February for them to keep their youth. 2D was the seed to be planted to keep their eternal youth in bloom. In other words, 2D was to be lowered into the ground and fed to the demon to restore their covenant for another 25 years. Lady Hollodown wasn't Moonflower's grandma or great-grandma. She was Moonflower. Noodle returned home to tell Russel the news, only to be met with the news that the prophecy had been solved and that 2D was in trouble. Originally, in the prophecy, the site where the ritual was taking place was some distance from their house on Silver Lake, and Russel would have jumped into the car he had built, along with Murdoc and Noodle, to rush off to save their friend. But this seems to have been another miscalculation, as the Forever cult does this ritual in a temple built outside their very home. The band quickly rushes over the fence and sneaks into the Forever cult's abode. During this time, 2D can be seen within the sacrificial chamber, drinking what he dubs his lovely smoothie drink, as he is being prepared for his Aura exam. The smoothie, along with the Tease from before, are actually laced with a drug referred to as Datura, which is made from moonflowers. Now we know why Lady Hollodown was going by that pseudonym. I think I described this drug well in my short.
So I don't know why I didn't put two and two together, but I don't know if all of you did either, so I'm going to enlighten you real quick. Do you know what a moonflower actually is? It's a perennial flower that blooms at night. It looks almost like a trumpet, but it's shaped as a star at the end. Common names for moonflowers are thornapple, devil's weed, hell's bells, devil's trumpet, Jimson weed, but it's what you can make with moonflowers that's the concerning part. The main name for the drug is Datura that can cause extreme hallucinations, confusion, and amnesia. And what does 2D have here?
Who am I talking to again? What's this thing in my hand?
And here he's imagining that everyone is Thundercat. And one of the ways that people take Datura is they crush the seeds and make it into a tea.
I'd just been over to the Forever Club next door for a peppermint tea.
Yeah, that wasn't peppermint tea. They must have been giving him very, very small doses, because most of the time it's a pretty extreme reaction. Now here's the part that concerns me. They gave 2D a lot. I mean, look at this face. And in extreme cases, it can cause permanent memory loss, schizophrenia, and anxiety attacks. And they don't go away. They last pretty much your whole life. Let's just hope that 2D doesn't have lasting effects.
So, while the tea was made with the crushed flower seeds, and likely had a lower dosage of Datura, the smoothie was made with the whole flower, and completely knocked 2D on his rump. He was now completely unable to resist, as he was strapped to the wheel of time, as I call it, and was lowered down into the pit, to be fed to the time demon. This is where the music video for Silent Running takes place. The band can be seen hiding in the sacrificial chamber, planning out how to rescue 2D before it's too late. Murdoc spots his beloved moonflower, Lady Hollodown, and quickly spritzes himself with a bit of his essence of Murdoc, so that he can make a good impression when the two meet, even though she is about to sacrifice his friend 2D. The Forever cult continue to lower 2D into the pit. He looks back and begs Lady Hollodown not to do this. He trusted her. He was beginning to love her, and this betrayal had broken his heart again. His heart having been broken before when his past love Paula Cracker had cheated on him with Murdoc. This whole situation can be seen as a reverse situation, with 2D stealing the girl from Murdoc this time around.
Flower, I love you. Pathetic. Noodle reckons they've kidnapped him. I say no chance. The boy went willingly just to knock me off. He's clearly still annoyed about that Paula Cracker incident.
Now Lady Hollodown had admittedly begun falling for 2D as well, his essence being the purest she had ever witnessed. She decides to save 2D from the demon, instead of feeding him to it, and knocks her followers away, reeling the rope back up and away from the hungry creature below. Before the Forever Cult can react, the band sneak up on the group and become exposed. In a moment of chaos, Russel and Noodle begin to fight with the cult, as Lady Hollodown continues to reel 2D back to safety. Murdoc, trying to impress Lady Hollodown, grabs a hold of the rope and helps bring 2D up. He takes a moment, however, to look back at her and give her a wink. This causes Lady Hollodown to become startled, and she loses grip of the rope, Murdoc becoming entangled in it and is pulled toward the hole, where he slams his crotch into one of the wooden beams surrounding the well. This impact causes Murdoc to lose his bottle of the essence of Murdoc. 2D free falls toward the demon. The demon opens its maw and reaches to snap down on its meal. But before that can happen, the bottle of the essence of Murdoc falls into its mouth, and the demon explodes into a green flame of distorted time. The members of the Forever Cult instantly turn to dust, their original ages being restored to them. Lady Hollodown, however, merely faints. Her aging was postponed by her selfless deed in saving 2D, although her spirit had been expelled from her body in the blast, and that is why she entered this comatose state. The police soon arrive, having heard the explosion, and they take all of the band in for questioning. All but Murdoc, who turned his back on everyone and ran off to save his own skin. 2D was clearly still suffering from the effects of the Datura that Lady Hollodown had given him, and Russel hadn't slept in weeks, having forced himself to remain awake so he didn't miss a transmission from the static. And of course, Lady Hollodown was now in the coma-like state. Seeing the condition that these three were in, the police took the band and Lady Hollodown to the hospital, and had them all examined and taken care of, before the questioning began. This is where the events of the Cracker Island music video take place. 2D had been checked out by the doctors, but is suffering major hallucinations as a side effect of the Datura in his system. Noodle uses her one phone call to get a hold of Murdoc, so he could bail them all out before she would have to spend the night detained, while the others were kept at the hospital. He told her that he would be on his way, but it wasn't for her or any of them. It was so he could complete the prophecy and get his kiss. Demonic energy flows through 2D, and then Russel, and then the TV, as it makes its way back to its body. This is the spirit of the true form of Lady Hollodown that we see from the storyboards on Jamie Hewlett's Instagram, the pink eyes that Russel has being reminiscent of the original demon design. Her body jolts back to life, revitalized, and it floats to the waiting room, in a limbo-like state. She arrives just as Murdoc does, and she unveils her face. Now reunited with her body, the curse attached to her soul begins to age her, though still not as quickly as the others. Murdoc and Lady Hollodown have the long-awaited prophesied kiss, to the disgust, shock, and disappointment of the rest of the band. Given what all had just taken place, the video closes with a newscast of the blazing time distortion in the pit, caused by the destruction of the time demon. A week after the events take place, we are forwarded an email by Murdoc. The conversation is between Lady Hollodown and the Great Leader himself. Murdoc had convinced Lady Hollodown to go on a date with him, after repeatedly sending voice messages and texts, since he was the only person in the world who didn't see her as the monster she truly was. It's in this email that Lady Hollodown reveals that she had sent the original prophecy to Murdoc, and had used the kiss as an incentive to help her end the murderous cycle of immortality that she had found herself trapped within. She had also sent Russel all the clips through the static channel as well, using her time magic, accessible to her by channeling the demon's now expelled time powers. Now she had devised this whole plan to end the cycle when she was returning to her body, realizing that this was the moment that set everything into motion. When we see her spirit depicted on the TV, she was not only looking for her body, but was sending all the information back in time so that it would indefinitely take place. This is where the time cycle begins, the paradox, if you will. Lady Hollodown explains that this immortality ritual had been discovered by mistake when they were making their film, as a young man fell down into the pit and was eaten by the demon, and in the following 25 years, everyone present at that time did not age. They made a pact to continue this process indefinitely, and formed the Forever Cult around it to make things more formal and easier to cope with. She ends the letter by telling Murdoc that she will go to the drive-in with him, and she knows exactly what movie she wants to see with him. The movie that she and her crew had made all those years ago, when this all began. We see Murdoc and Lady Hollodown at the drive-in that following Saturday. Lady Hollodown had continued to age rapidly, and by the time their date came around, she was practically a mummy. As the movie drew close to the end, but before it ended, Lady Hollodown turned to dust. A poetic ending, viewing the movie that marked where this all began. Murdoc claims that aside from her turning to dust, This was the best date he had ever been on, which I find depressingly sad. He may be evil, but Murdoc's had a rough go. We see that Murdoc is quick to move on, but he does have Lady Hollodown placed into a fancy urn with her pseudonym on it. While he is moving on from the attachment as well, 2D holds the jar close, remembering the love that once was, and was lost, yet again. In the aftermath of the rupture of the Time Demon, Noodle stands just above the Hollywood sign, trying to decide if she should just blow the whole thing up, and as she states, Hollywoodland is the biggest cult of them all, and deserves to be ended alongside the Forever Cult. But this may not be the best way to end things, and so Noodle decides to look into other means of closing this chapter in the Gorillaz' lives. She instead watches the pink dawn rise over LA from her position on the Hollywood Hills. Russel, finally resting from his long nights staring at the TV, takes some time out in the wilderness of the desert. He can be seen snoozing with a soda nearby. We hear that some biker gangs are nearby and are causing some trouble, but Russel is too tired right now to deal with it. He's not bothered by the gunshots. I do wonder if this could allude to the next chapter in the Gorillaz saga, as Jamie and Damon confirmed that it was already in the works. I guess only time will tell. There was one more video released that shows 2D standing on the disembodied head of the Time Demon. The demon is somehow still alive, and 2D is playing his melodica to it in an attempt to make it whole again through music. While that didn't work, this video does show us two important things. One, the rupture hole is no longer filled with time distortion, since 2D is actually in the rupture hole now, and so we may not get any time travel phases. 2D says he will visit next time they are in the area, which means that the band is most likely leaving their home in Silver Lake, and with that, the phase concludes. Until then, we can only dream of what lies next. For me, I hope it's either a phase where we are partnered with the now grown-up Gangreen gang and reunite with Ace to take on the bikers, or something related to the time rupture hole. Maybe the Gorillaz will travel through time to end the time distortions. Could you imagine Gorillaz animated in different styles throughout the decades for music videos? I for one would love that. Something seemed to have been off about this whole rupture business. Remember this part that I mentioned before? This may actually hint at a bigger problem that took place during Cracker Island, something that is yet to be resolved. We'll get back to that in a moment. Well, with that in mind, listen to this.
I'm out digging another hole. Murdoc reckons the new me is at the bottom, so... Oh, hang about. That's funny. Ooh, the ground's shaking. Oh, maybe it's my stomach rumbling. I better have some lunch.
The rupture seems to have started before it actually did start, given the time distortions, I suppose. Lots of hints in here, but no clear path as to what's next. Maybe we'll get some answers in a mid-phase album era, like we did with Plastic Beach in the fall, or Song Machine and Meanwhile. Who's to say? So, what did you make of the Cracker Island era? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to see if you all enjoyed it as much as I did. This was the most fun I'd had following a series for a long time, and it truly felt like a return to form for Gorillaz, reminiscent of the stories presented during the Plastic Beach era and the rise of the Ogre before that. But as always, until next time, keep your eyes wide open and never stop reading. I'll see you all.
Howdy, folks. You like blood, violence, freaks of nature?
Then head on over to argdigest.com to receive your free digital copy of our second issue. This time we are featuring Boivar, user 64342, BaphometF666, Monster, and Urban Spook, with interview with 10 Tapes creator, Jeffiet. Believe me, you won't want to miss this one. Physical print and Kindle copies available. See link in the description and pinned comment. Thanks so much for watching. Now I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my patrons and channel members. Thanks to you, I'm able to do what I love. CNK114, Investigator Zeus, Dobby's Music, Jabra Mullins, Free Spirit Katie, MC Darfer, Roxy, Vexus, Agnieszka, Granny Monster, Nightmare Luna, Lily Ardat, and Elliot the Epic 242. Really, thank you so much for everything you do. It means the world to me.